Welcome, everybody. So, what we have is a historically important political situation, which is a vacancy in the Supreme Court. And we're going to talk about this in the context of our Game of Robes simulation of the confirmation process, whereby a new Supreme Court justice is nominated and voted on and selected and sworn into office. And so, there are lots of pieces here, and I'm going to go over some of them first. First off, we have Justice Ginsburg, who's been serving for almost 30 or 40 years. I believe she was nominated by President Clinton in the 90s. And the president nominates the Supreme Court justice as per Article 2 of the Constitution. And then the Senate is supposed to do what's called advise and consent. They are supposed to review the nominee, decide whether the person is fit to serve, and then consent to the nomination by voting on it. And Article 3 of the Constitution determines what the Supreme Court does and how it's constituted. So, in this situation, with Justice Ginsburg just recently passing away, President Trump is in charge of nominating a judge to replace her. He went through a process of reviewing some judges that were on his list that was provided by an organization called the Federalist Society, which suggests judges that are what are called strict constitutionalists or originalists. And these are people that reflect President Trump as a Republican's view of what a judge should do. Right? This is a judge that reviews the Constitution and follows kind of what's called an originalist concept, which says, what did the founders mean when they wrote the Constitution? An activist or a more progressive view would be that the judge is supposed to help the Constitution grow into the times, adjust to the changing world. So those philosophies are a little bit in conflict. And President Trump got a list of judges that were originalists from the Federalist Society. And he, during his campaign in 2016, said, I am going to only nominate judges from this list. One of the judges from this list is Amy Barrett. And Amy Barrett is Trump's nominee to succeed Justice Ginsburg. So let's move these out of the way. Now it's time for the Supreme Court to do its job as prescribed by the Constitution, which is advise and consent. And the way they do that is by through the Senate Judiciary Committee. And the Senate Judiciary Committee is typically what they will do is they will have hearings where they will ask questions of the judge, the nominee, and they will ask her about her philosophy, about some of her decisions, etc. Some people see this as a way to just evaluate whether the judge is qualified to sit on the Supreme Court, meaning does she have does she have the credentials? Does she have the temperament? Does she have the whatever to serve on the Supreme Court? But recently it's become very, very political, and the Senate Judiciary Committee is split between Democrats and Republicans. The ranking member, the leader, the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee is Senator Graham. And because Republicans have a majority in the Senate, they have a majority of the members on the Senate Judiciary Committee. The ranking member, meaning the minority member, is Senator Feinstein. So all of these are roles that we may take on during our simulation. A couple of other important players here are Senator Mitch McConnell, who is the Senate Majority Leader, and Senator Chuck Schumer, who is the Senate Minority Leader. They are not on the Senate Judiciary Committee. They will not be holding the hearings, but they do have influence. Okay? So the open question, if we think about it like this, most people agree that Judge Barrett is a qualified judge. So it comes down less to her being a qualified judge or not, and more to what can be accomplished politically. Can she be opposed? Can the Senate Judiciary Committee, which is composed by this many Republicans and this many Democrats, can the Democrats convince a certain number of Republicans to not vote to pass Judge Barrett to the Senate. Okay, so that's going to be the first part of the simulation is, can we prevent her from being passed to the Senate, or can you ensure that she is passed to the Senate, depending on what role you play? The Republicans want her to be passed to the Senate so that they can have a full Senate vote and she can be confirmed. The Democrats would like for her not to be passed to the Senate so that she can be opposed, and Trump would have to nominate a different judge, and potentially by that point the election has happened. Maybe he's been reelected, maybe he hasn't. So there's a lot of political gamesmanship going on here. So let's move Chuck Schumer and McConnell out of the way for a second. And let's talk about the larger politics. And the larger politics are that you have Donald Trump and Joe Biden running against each other to be the next president of the United States. You also, interestingly enough, have Joe Biden's vice president is Senator Kamala Harris, right? And she is on the Senate Judiciary Committee. So she will be part of the team that is interviewing, confirming, interrogating Judge Barrett. So she'll have an opportunity to ask some questions. Now, let's talk. Those are the practical elements. If the Senate Judiciary Committee, as is expected, will vote to send Judge Barrett out to the larger Senate, then what's going to happen is the Senate will vote. So let's talk about, well, let's just review that process. So we said there's a vacancy created by death or retirement. The president nominates a judge. The nominee typically will meet with senators, and usually senators will meet with the nominee. We've already heard that some senators, Democratic senators, will not meet with this judge as an act of protest. And we'll talk about what the protest here is in a second. But so then the Senate schedules the hearings, the Senate Judiciary Committee meetings happen. The committee votes to send the nominee to the Senate. The Senate will then vote to confirm. Oftentimes there are speeches about this. And then if the Senate votes to confirm, then the new justice is sworn in. So let's go back and see what the issues are. Some of the issues are past issues. Merrick Garland was a nominee of President Obama. He was nominated in the last year of President Obama's term. The Senate chose not to submit him and vote on him, instead to wait on the next election. And so that is a point of contention. Many Democrats say, well, this is unfair. You didn't let this nominee get a vote. And you should have, but you're pushing this other nominee to get a vote, and it's only a couple of months until the election, or a month until the election. So that's one question. Another issue from the past is that the last confirmation hearing was very, very contentious. Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, there were lots of allegations, there were lots of charges against him that came up late in the process of the confirmation hearings, and it led to a lot of acrimony on both sides, where people were very, very upset. And that anger and that bitterness is probably going to spill over into this hearing. And we'll talk about that when we start talking about the objectives. With regards to the justice, some of the things that have come up so far about her are that she's Catholic, and in fact, one of the senators was saying that she was concerned that she would be too influenced by her religion. There's also concern that Judge Barrett has said that she believed that Roe v. Wade, which was the Supreme Court decision that said that abortion could not be regulated by the states, was wrongly decided, and that scares people who are abortion rights proponents. And then also, and this hasn't been talked about all that much, but it may be talked about during the hearings, is whether she supports due process rights for the accused. And specifically, people who are accused of things, college students who are accused of things, and there are some questions as to whether they get the same rights that people who aren't in college get with regards to protections from potentially false allegations. So again, those are things that may or may not come up during the hearings. The hearings will be part based on issues, and part of them will be political theater. So let's talk about objectives and strategies, and we're going to do this live. So if I'm a Democrat, then again, one of the things I would love to have happen is to stop the nomination, or stop the actual confirmation, right? Which I can do in two ways. One, I can do it by preventing her from being voted on by the Senate or by the Senate Judiciary Committee, or I can prevent the vote in the Senate proper. Another thing I might want to do is just make points that support the party, right? There has been talk. I don't know if it's real talk or not, but there was talk of potentially attempting to impeach the president to slow down the nomination, saying that him nominating a Supreme Court justice is an abuse of power because we're so close to the election. But fundamentally, impeachment could be either a legitimate act or a political act. So that's something that we would have to see. But if you're thinking about your objectives, and your goal is to stop the confirmation, that could be one of them. But another objective is larger political, right? We have the presidential election, and obviously one goal is to have your candidate win the presidential election, but we also have the Senate races. And some of the senators are in tight races. And if you can help beat your opponent, or if you can help support your party's candidate, that might be a good objective, even if you can't stop the confirmation. And there's always the concept of just that good old fashioned fundraising, right? So even if you can't accomplish your actual objective, you might use pursuing your objective to get more funds. All right, so there may be some additional ones, but we'll take a look at that. So you'll be getting, when you get one of our roles here, you will get assigned an objective. But then it comes to strategies. And we talked a little bit about strategies, about what can you do to accomplish your goals. So one of the things that used to be possible that the Senate has that the House of Representatives does not have is something called the filibuster. And the filibuster is it's not in the Constitution. It's just an agreed upon rule that says that if a senator wants to prevent a vote, they can do that as long as they have 40 people, more than 40 people, who agree to basically keep talking until the other side gives up. Okay, so you can't just have a majority in the Senate to pass legislation if the other side wants to stall or protect their rights as a minority party. They can have what's called a filibuster. But what's interesting is that the judicial filibuster, the ability to filibuster judges, was done away with during the Obama administration. And so that tool that a Senate minority, in this case the Democrats, could use to prevent a Supreme Court justice from being passed is no longer there. So that strategy is gone. But other strategies obviously are speeches, right? There are questions that you can be asking. You can do press releases and statements. As we said, some of the senators are not meeting with the judge. And so that sends a message potentially to their supporters that they consider this an illegitimate or not fair process. So that's something. Now, of course, you can also go and talk with the senators and try to convince them to vote the way that you want. And whether that's talking or whether that's threatening or whether that's bribing, and I don't mean bribing with money, but I mean saying, listen, if you vote this way, then I will support you in this other legislation that you care about, or you better vote this way because, President Trump is going to win or Vice President Biden is going to win. And if you vote the wrong way, then you're going to be in the minority or you're going to be in the majority, and we're going to remember this, right? So this is some stuff. This is very high stakes because the majority, the Republicans who are in the majority, don't want to be in the minority, whether it's under Trump or whether it's under Biden. They may support President Trump, they may support President Biden, but they really want to be in the majority and not in the minority. So that's also very important. So those are some of the strategies that we'll talk about how to use. But what we did here is we went over some of the process elements, some of the people, and some of the objectives and strategies. So what we're going to do is, as we roll into the hearings, which start on October 12th, we're going to watch what strategies are people using, but we're also going to do 2 or 3 things as part of this simulation. One is we're going to make some predictions about how things go, and then we're going to watch and see how they actually go. 2 is we're going to watch the confirmation hearings and evaluate the arguments, evaluate the performances of the different people. And then thirdly, we're going to do our own simulation where you try to advance your objective. Now, this won't be a real simulation because we'll be watching the real thing happen in real time, but this will be a situation where you as President Trump, or you as Judge Barrett, or you as Senator Graham, or you as Senator Harris, or Mitch McConnell, or Chuck Schumer, you are playing your roles and seeing if you can advance your objectives while we're moving forward. And we will add some additional roles because there are people that I haven't listed here. Many of the senators on the Judiciary Committee, as well as general senators, are either in tight races or they're in easy races. And that affects how they vote. And we have people who are in not up for election this year. In the Senate, 33%, which is basically 33 senators, are up for re-election every 2 years because the Senate serves a 6-year term. So there are some people that aren't up for re-election this year who will be up for re-election in 2 years or in 4 years. But this is that kind of that open question as to how are you going to vote to make sure that you get re-elected and that your ideals get furthered. All right. So this is a good introduction to how this whole thing is going to work. Hopefully you learned something about the Senate confirmation process and the process for selecting and replacing a judge in the Supreme Court. And we'll move on with the simulation soon.